All right, well, welcome. Well, I'm so glad to see so many of you, and this is just a really good time of year. Yes, today was my first day back in the classroom for the spring semester. I sat a class just before this, and so it's the best kind of chaos. But as we start the new year, it's always a chance to establish those goals and to examine our habits and to just kind of recalibrate. And so, I tell you, because I am often, when I do these, I am preaching to the choir, especially if there are colleagues on. You cannot attest to which of these strategies I'm better at than others. But I'm so excited to join you for this first series of 2023. So I am an assistant professor and extension specialist in the School of Human Environmental Sciences in Cafe. And I am the extension specialist for family finance and resource management. And so, of course, finances is a topic that we manage. That is definitely a resource that we manage. But there are other things besides finances that are vital to our livelihood. And so that is some of what we're going to be talking about today. But things like our time, our energy, our relationships, these are all things, our health. These are resources that are necessary for our resilience, necessary for our productivity and our livelihood. All right, so let's jump right in and get my slides to advance. All right, so in our time together, we are going to be doing a quick overview, a highlights reel of a curriculum that we published through FCS Extension here at UK in 2022 called Time Well Spent: Productivity Skills for Success. And so it is a 4-session curriculum meant to be done over 4 weeks or 4-hour-long sessions. So I'm going to give you a highlights reel. If you like what you see, feel free to reach out to me for more information about that curriculum. But today specifically, we're going to be rethinking time as a commodity, time as one of those things like our finances, but as something that we really do need to manage so that we can yield some kind of return. We're going to look at a few strategies to boost our productivity, both at home and at work. And then we're going to look at some ways to be strategic about our self-care. And so both our professional self-care, but also personal, because really sometimes the two lives are not easy to compartmentalize. All right, and so, in thinking of that and thinking of this, this idea of work-life balance, is it a myth, right? Like, is it a myth? So let me ask you, and you can use your text chat here. What keeps you from being more productive? What are some of those kind of roadblocks you have that are the roles you're juggling that makes balance difficult for you? Okay, so focus. So improving focus, interruptions, distractions. Yes, emails, overthinking, absolutely. Too many things. So being overwhelmed. Just everyday stress, right? Life is pretty stressful. Yeah. Urgency tasks, right? So deadlines can often keep us from pursuing goals. Burnout, we'll talk about that today as well. Yeah, emails, meetings, lack of focus, more meetings. Amen to that. All right, and so we're going to look at not respecting after hours boundaries. That's a good one. Yes, this idea that everything is a priority. Everything is a priority. Yeah. So let's talk about some of these. I kind of do think work-life balance is a myth, right? Because our skills do not look like this. And if yours do, then let's go out for coffee and you can give me some tips. But balance doesn't mean that the scales are weighted equally. What balance means is that over time, they balance each other out, right? And so this is a week, start of the semester. I have so many things due today, or really due last week, that I am trying to get to various teams. And so this is a week where my work with the start of the semester and students, it is really the heavier of the two. And I've just had to be really honest with my family. I'm a mom of 3. And so some days I really struggle to know what day of the week it is, right? Who's supposed to be where and who needs what from me. And so I had to just tell them I have a lot of deadlines this week. And so I'm going to be working different hours or because I need to meet those. But I can see that, in a couple weeks or over the holiday break, my life was able to take priority. And so it's not necessarily about day-to-day balance, it's about over time balance. And what does your overall balance look like? And are you employing strategies to help you manage your time? And so it's more about work-life management, because when we're redefining balance, we also need to redefine productivity. So productivity is when we accomplish something intentional, right? And so sometimes, some days that is measured very differently than others. That's measured differently at work. It's measured differently at home. And so when we are productive, it means that we are being intentional with our time. We are accomplishing our goals, and we are. Some days that looks like progress towards a goal. Some days that looks like survival, right? And I think it's necessary. So understanding that the productivity doesn't always mean output. It doesn't always mean output. It means intentionality, that you're achieving what you set out to achieve. Because if we don't put in these strategies that help us have a better balance, have a better work-life balance, help us manage the things that require our energy and our time, it can lead to burnout. It can definitely lead to personal burnout. But we'll focus most of our conversation on that professional aspect today, but professional burnout. And, the World Health Organization defines burnout as chronic workplace stress that is manifest or, noted by a few symptoms. So energy depletion and exhaustion, negative feelings towards your job or towards coworkers, or having that bitterness, that resentment. And then a reduced professional productivity, where you're filling your time, but you're not having anything to show. And we want to avoid this. And especially as we are still, as a society, recalibrating from the last couple of years. So, what do we do about it? How do we better manage our time? Well, we have to use our time as a tool, right? Not something that we rest upon, but something that we use to build other things, or in this idea of a resource, but using time, seeing it as an investment, as a commodity that when we invest, we can produce a return, we can see good yield from our work. And if we're not seeing that yield, however we define the measurement, then we need to re-examine some of our habits and our practices, because we can be busy all day long and not be productive. And so how can we choose to invest our time as a resource that will help promote our livelihood? Well, the first step in this really is to create routines. And so if you want to be productive, both at home and on the job, examine your routines. To start there. You also part of workplace productivity has to do with the personal routines you put in place. And they may seem simple, right? Like, we know we should get sleep. We know we should fuel our bodies with good food. We know we should get up from our computers. And walk. We should climb the stairs and not take the elevator. We should get out in the sunshine. But many of us, research would say, don't do it. We operate on little sleep. We use our devices right before we go to bed. Many of us suffer from insomnia. We don't use food as fuel. We sometimes will pacify ourselves with things that are unhealthy. And we all, many of us do this. But looking at your personal routines, because when we are well rested, when we are well nourished, and when we are moving our bodies, we have more energy. We have more energy to give those tasks that we want to accomplish. And so you cannot be productive if you're running on fumes. So examining your personal routines, but also examining your professional routines. So what habits have you stacked that allow you to yield the input that you want to yield? And so some 4 professional routines that are good to have in place are prep, production, pause routines, and play routines. So prep, what are you doing the night before to set yourself up for an easy morning? So are you packing your work bag, getting your lunch ready? If you have a family responsibilities, doing the things you need to do the night before so that your morning isn't so hectic. So, because if your morning if you're hectic from the beginning, then that's going to set the tone for your day and for what you can accomplish. At work, what prep routines do you have that allow you to start your work right away? Is your office organized? Are your files organized? Is your inbox organized? That's a current weak spot of mine right now. What prep routines before you leave the office? Do you shut things down so that you can start the next day and know exactly where you want to jump in? So your prep routine. So what do you do that sets yourself up for success on an intentional basis? The others are, production routines. How do you have your time? How is your time structured throughout your day? Do you fill your calendar with as many Zoom invites as it will allow? Do you save your schedule? And we'll revisit that notion. Do you save your schedule so that you can make your time intentional and have enough time to do a task, to get into a flow, to allow yourself to think? Do you have things set up in your office, on your files, that allow you to be productive? So do you know where to get something? And so you'll hear, especially if you take our full curriculum, we talk a lot about clutter and how clutter can really be an impediment towards productivity. With production, do you have a routine when you come into your office? So do you do this, this, and this? And what routines do is it signals our brains that it is time to switch roles. And so we want to activate those neural pathways that say, yep, it's time to get to work. And so if our routine is get to the office, throw our stuff down, get some coffee, go talk to a coworker, scroll social media, spend the first hour checking email, then that is not a very healthy production routine. So do you come in, I'm not saying don't say hi to your coworkers, definitely do, but what is your routine to signal to your brain that it is time to start working? Is it looking at your calendar, opening up the blinds, letting sunlight in, those types of things? But also, many of us do not pause throughout our day. We don't stop for lunch. We don't stop to talk to coworkers. This is not an intentional behavior of mine, but one that I will often fall in a rut if I am not careful. Because I'm a busy working mom, my time on campus is very valuable. So I am very regimented. And if I'm not careful, I don't pause. I don't pause to catch my breath, to work in the bathroom break, to go get some water, to explore that beautiful sunshine or beautiful campus. That isn't good for us either in terms of our focus and our mental health. But are we building intentional times in our day to pause? And so, you know, the Apple Watch is a good example. It, you know, dings you at 10 till the hour to get up, get up. And so if I'm at home and I'm working from home, I might use that 10 minutes to throw in a load of laundry, or to pick up some things around the house, or to let that be a social media time, or respond to emails during that 10 minutes. If I'm in the office or on campus and I have the ability, if I'm not in a meeting or on Zoom or in class, then I'll use that time to go fill a water bottle, to walk down the hall, to go get a fresh breath of fresh air, but taking time to pause, to eat lunch, to actually eat lunch, not in front of your computer. And then to play. Do you have a routine to play? Are you setting those boundaries so that you clock out? Are you answering your email? And sometimes it's necessary, right? If that scale happens to be out of whack for that week. But is it your, like, over time, is that more your habit? Or are you, intentional with your family time? Intentional, like I put in my syllabi that I will return your email. I will do my best within 2 business days. Feel free to reach out, but to try not to send emails so late at night or so early in the morning, or over weekends or over breaks. And you can even automate your emails now, because I find myself working sometimes, but I'll often remind myself that I need to respect other people's boundaries. So I'll schedule those. And again, but scheduling vacations. Research says that we leave so much vacation time on the table in American societies, and that when we do take a vacation, we don't truly unplug. We still answer emails, we still answer calls. And so if we don't schedule time to play, and that means not work, to have fun, then when we get to the office, we are so depleted that we can't recharge like we should. So the first thing to do is to really, someone said you should tell it to your boss. Yeah, I know. I know, and it is tough when everybody doesn't have the same work philosophies. And luckily, like with, the Office of Work Life, for example, though, promoting this as more of a climate is helpful in the workplace, but understanding that routines are important. And so we can't always help what those around us do, but we can help what we do. And so one of the first things you can be intentional about are examining your routines and if they need to be better. Okay, and then the next thing is to look at do you procrastinate? Do you have a proclivity towards procrastination? Now I do. I always have. And so this is something that I constantly have to really work on. Some phases of life I'm better at than others. But like I mentioned, productivity is when we are using our time efficiently to work towards completing intentional tasks. It's not busyness. We can have had a very busy day and gotten nothing accomplished. Not progress or output. But procrastination is when we delay one task or many tasks that we really should be prioritizing. And so in order to combat procrastination, we first have to figure out, why are we procrastinating? And it can go back to some of those routines. And there are 4 major reasons why we might procrastinate. Emotions, physical needs, protection, or uncertainty. So what research will tell us is that procrastination it doesn't mean you're lazy. Now, some of you might want to dispute that, right? Like, we won't name names. But what it does, especially if you are prone to perfectionism or you are prone to anxiety, procrastination can serve as a coping mechanism. It is very similar to a fight, flight, freeze response. That is our brain's way of freezing, our body's way of freezing to help us not stress, right? Like, it'll eventually, it's only a Band-Aid fix. It's not a long-term solution. Eventually, we have to face that whatever task generally that is causing us stress. But Procrastination is a very normal response for our body putting off something that is causing us stress. And so we need to look at why. Why are we procrastinating? So are our emotions, are we hungry, lonely, angry, tired? And that bleeds into physical needs too. Did we have a very hectic morning, or an argument with a child on the way to school, or something you read something on social media or saw something on the news that has your heart very heavy? But when our emotional state interferes, it can, block those receptors in our body that won't allow us to access that higher cognitive thought. So when we are emotionally flooded, there are regions of our brain we cannot access. And so when it feels like you're really hitting that wall, that writer's block, it may be, you might want to look at your emotions. And it could be that you're overwhelmed. That was a response that came up a lot in the chat when Izetta asked, why did you attend? Overwhelmed. And overwhelmed, when we don't know where to start sometimes, we often just don't. So another is the physical needs. Do you just need to eat something? Do you need to take a breath of fresh air? Have you not slept in 3 days and you are truly running on fumes? Is there a physical reason that you are not on your best game? And so establishing some of those personal routines can help address that. And the professional, not working through lunch, eating lunch, those types of things. Again, protection. Is this a coping mechanism for you? As someone who is very prone to perfectionism and anxiety, I know for me that I use procrastination as a coping mechanism because I deal deadline to deadline, and so that's the camp that I fall in, that I have to name it to tame it, that I have to identify that that's what I'm doing so that I can actively combat it. And then the other one, maybe it's just, you just don't know what to do. Your role was never clear. The deadline was never clear. You were never trained on that topic. You were asked to do something that is just not in your wheelhouse. And so maybe you're procrastinating because you just truly don't know what to do. So first we want to identify why we're procrastinating and then take steps to address that. So some tips for organizing your time once you get to work and stop procrastinating is to eliminate, communicate, automate, and consolidate. So eliminate. What are you doing that you really shouldn't be doing, right? What can you eliminate, delegate, or outsource? I have 2 of my 3 kids are teenagers. So I am delegating quite a lot these days, and I'll be real honest, I am liking it. And so, in order for our house to function, I need them to load the dishwasher and do their laundry and put it away. I have decided that is something I can eliminate from my load and delegate to them, and I'm teaching them responsibility at the same time. The same is true though at work. Many of us busy ourselves with things that really another person on our team is better suited to, or maybe that person to do. I'll use marketing as an example. If we have a graphic designer on our team, and I am sitting here designing it before I pass it on to the graphic designer, then I am doing something that really should be outsourced. And so how can we, and this could be depending on what your budget and your family structure supports, what your workload is and your team structure supports, what are the things you outsource? So if you just truly it might be many people outsource their lawn care or their, deep house cleaning, or their we outsource a lot these days, DoorDash and Instacart. Those are all examples of outsourcing, but it helps to save time if we can figure out a strategy that will help us. Yes, I'm liking this teenage stage of life for a few reasons. A few give me quite a bit of stress. But that spills into, this idea of automating as well. So we can automate our slow cookers. We can automate our dishwashers. We can automate our emails to send replies at the beginning of a business day. We can automate prescription refills and pet food to come in the mail each month when we should replenish it. We can automate bill pay, right? Like if we have the money in our accounts to cover it. But can we use technology to our advantage to automate things that just relieve burden from us? And so taking, and UK has so many good workshops for technology. If you want to learn how to use Word better or calendar better or anything so that you can make your technology work for you, but automating might be a solution for organizing your time. The same consolidate. What can you simplify? What can you simplify? And so that may be, you know, even reducing the clutter in our homes or our offices. It means it's less stuff that we have to manage. Consolidating our schedules and where we choose to say yes simplifies the demands that are put on us. Even, you know, consolidation can be, maybe you need the meal service, right? That or the pre-chopped veggies or the lunch kits, but is there a way to simplify? And that's what consolidation is about. And maybe a theme you'll see running throughout these tips is communicate, right? If you do these things and you don't communicate with, you know, your partner or spouse at home, then no one knows that you've put these plans in place. If you're not communicating these strategies to your kids, another tip we've recently done is we have shared notes in our, you know, our phones so that we can add things to grocery lists, or they can, we have shared calendars, but we are good about communicating so that everybody can stay on the same page. But so instead of kid A telling me, Mom, I need this, I have eliminated that middleman. And now kid A can put it directly on the list. So when I go to the grocery store, if it's not on the list, it didn't get bought. And so now that does not work for all stages of life, and I recognize this. And so none of these are one size fits all. It is reflect on your situation and look and explore strategies that work for you. But the same with communicating with your team, communicating with your students. So are you going to check email outside of business hours? If not, if you're not going to check them on the weekend, it's okay. Put that in your reply, put that in your syllabus. Communicate that you are going on vacation and that your inbox will not be monitored. Communication is key for any team or family or structure or unit to thrive. Oh, any app list? Yeah, apps and technology, again, making it work for you there are a lot of downsides to technology. There are a lot of really good ones too that can help with time management and productivity. All right, so distractions also came up a lot in the text chat. And so a key to productivity is really minimizing our distractions. And there are three, you know, main ones that I'll highlight today, but there are so many others. And so, you know, reflect on your distractions and then how you can minimize. So saving your schedule. If we are not careful, our schedules will fill up all during the day, at night, on the weekends, our calendars fill up. And so how can you save your schedule? Maybe you are a team leader and you can move to 30-minute meetings instead of an hour, or you can adjourn at a quarter till to give people time to have, you know, prep for their next commitment or obligation. I try, if at all possible, to reserve 1 or 2 days a week in my calendar. I batch my meetings and I will stack my meetings, and then I will give myself a day without meetings so that I can write and actually do all the tasks that I have said yes to in these meetings. But are you protecting your time? Are you putting things on your calendar and saving your time? Because it is very hard to work when our schedule is compartmentalized. We do not always have control over that. So when we do, we have to be intentional about blocking work time, blocking 2 or 3 hours if possible, where you know you can work with minimal and distractions, and putting that in your calendar and then holding it there. Email can be a sinkhole, and we know this. And so are we minimizing the distractions? Is it your phone and your screen popping up every time? Are you getting a ding every time you get a new email? Cut that off, right? And turn that off, because it distracts us. And again, what this comes back to, productivity comes back a lot to how our brains are structured. And if we are getting in the flow with a task, and we are constantly interrupted, and we're constantly having to read that sentence over, start that thought over. It's like a show going to commercial break, right? Our brains keep going to commercial break, and then we're sooner or later, we're just gonna turn the show off. We lose interest, the plot never develops, and the more distractions we have, we get in a loop of that. People mention ADHD, but our brains get in a loop where our attention spans shorten if we don't exercise that muscle of focus. So training yourself to focus helps to carve those neural pathways that will reinforce productivity habits. And so allowing yourself to get in the flow, turning off, minimizing those distractions to give yourself uninterrupted work time. And a trick for escaping emails is to, let yourself do it first thing in the morning, right after lunch, and maybe before you in the office, or do it 5 minutes at the end of every hour. You're going to let yourself look at your emails. But, we feel that things are urgent. And sometimes they are. Sometimes things are time sensitive, but everything isn't time sensitive. And so creating some boundaries so that we don't spend our whole day on email. And then, of course, social sabotage. Social media can be another sinkhole that can distract us a lot. Socializing via text or phone calls, socializing in person. Again, after COVID, it's great to be able to socialize in person, but it might mean we're in the office all day, but we have done nothing all day because we have spent so much time chatting. So instead, how can you make that chat time intentional? Can you build in lunch dates with coworkers or coffee breaks where you can brainstorm? If you know you're a social person, then schedule a call with a colleague before your work session, because that'll get your brain going towards snowballing momentum. Can you save your social media as a reward for a task completed? So you have worked for 2 hours. At lunch, you're going to sit down, you're going to enjoy your lunch, and you're going to scroll social media. But what can you do if that is a distraction for you? Yeah, reacting to email is a black hole. Absolutely, it can. And so blocking that time, I think, is important. All right, so managing our task goes to it, and there are many ways to do this. This is a whole session in our curriculum, but the idea of habit stacking, when we can stack and batch things, we are much more likely to do things at once. Now, one thing though, and I will say this disclaimer, is that research says that multitasking is not productive. So we are not more productive when we multitask. And this goes back to that commercial analogy that I just used. When we multitask, too much is going on, and it keeps our brains from achieving flow. It keeps us from ever snowballing momentum. So, ways to manage our tasks: track them. What do you use to track? Is it a pen and paper? Is it a calendar? Is it an app? Do you productivity journal? Do you use Eisenhower matrix? There are so many ways to track your tasks, but you need to, there's some science behind this idea of a to-do list, right? And the dopamine hit we get from crossing something off of our to-do list. But when we track our task, we can see where our time is going. We can see that output, especially when work and there are things and deadlines, and we can block in our schedules, when we do something. do we deconstruct larger tasks? So say you have a day of meetings and you just have these small little 30-minute windows here and there. Well, can you deconstruct a larger task and assign that 30 minutes to get something done you know you can accomplish? Can you batch tasks? So like, a group like things together. So running errands, doing emails, returning phone calls. Can you batch like tasks together? Target. Can you target your tasks so that they are working towards a goal, so that they are intentional, so that they are timed, so that they are playing towards your skill set? This is not always possible, but when it is possible, then we need to employ it. Okay, so what do you do if you're sinking? What do you do if you are sinking in to-dos? Okay, so you've heard me say a lot, snowballing momentum. And because the best thing you can do is just get started. And so if you are sinking in to-dos, there are 5 C's, and I'm going to add a bonus C. There are 5 C's that you can do. First, calm yourself. Like if you are physically feeling overwhelmed, mentally feeling overwhelmed, you feel like you've hit a wall, calm yourself. Go for that walk, call that friend, make that cup of coffee, whatever is one of those joy triggers for you. We talk a lot about negative triggers, but what triggers joy in your life? What triggers calmness? What triggers peace? Figure out, do something to calm yourself. Deep breathe. And then create a list. Do a brain dump of all the things that you need to do. So what if it might be keeping you up at night, right? We often hear to brain dump before bed so that we can get a good night's sleep. But the same is true if you feel overwhelmed, especially at work with so many tasks, is do a brain dump of all the things that are required of you. And then you're going to kind of prioritize that list. So you're going to identify those main concerns for today. Okay, here's everything I have to do. Where do my priorities lie? What are my deadlines? What's most important? Where will there be the biggest ramifications if this doesn't get done? So identify your main concerns, and then everything else add to your calendar. Look for ways to deconstruct. Okay, I can do this here. I can do this here. I can eliminate that. I can ask somebody to help with this, but adding everything else to your calendar so your mind can see you have time to do it. And so it may be 2 weeks, and you respond to that email and say, I'd be happy to do this, but it'll be a couple weeks before I can get to it. Now, again, some of you are like, I can't say that to my boss. You can't say that to your boss, but we say yes to a lot of things that are not required of us from other people. Maybe, it's the PTO at your kid's school, or, somebody at your church, or anything, a neighbor. But we say yes to a lot that takes time away from the things we should be focusing on. And then to start on the most critical item. And so once you've identified those concerns for today, you have placed everything on another day to worry about, or another time, is to what do you need to start on? Where can you start? Where can you snowball momentum and, track your task? And I'm going to add the 6th C. Like if you are sinking and you are truly feeling overwhelmed, and these strategies, don't feel like they're even, scratching the surface, the 6th C would be to communicate to someone, to a colleague, to a boss, to a loved one, to a professional, but communicate, hey, there's too much on my plate right now. Can you help? And we are often a society who does not ask for help when we need it. We do not communicate when we are overwhelmed. We do not communicate when we have said yes to too many things. And so to communicate if you feel that you're sinking, but it's okay. All right, and so we're going to round up our time together talking about self-care. And really a buzzword for this has been prioritizing. And, part of that work-life management is learning to priority juggle. So we are all juggling a lot. We might be juggling an aging parent. We might be juggling sickness. Man, we have gone through it where somebody is sick at all times that was pretty much our October, November, and December. We're all juggling deadlines, but all of our balls look different. And so one of the keys to priority juggling is understanding what balls are made of rubber and what balls are made of glass. Now, each day your set of balls might look different. If you are getting an aging parent to a doctor's appointment, that might be a glass ball for that day. You might have to take some time off. If you have a grant deadline due that it is not movable, that might be a glass ball for that day. If you drop that ball, it will shatter and you can't put it back together. All right, but then there are some balls that are rubber. There are some balls that if you dropped it, it would just bounce and you can pick it back up when your hands are less full. And so it is looking at, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed, is this a glass ball or a rubber ball? Will this break? Can I juggle this? And or should I sit it down and focus on these areas? So priority juggling is I'm trying to monitor the chat, but yeah. Well, we all decompress in different ways, but learning to priority juggle. And those comments lead us to the last part that we'll talk about, this idea of professional and personal self-care. One of our balls should be our health, our mental health, our physical health. These should be something that we prioritize. And part of that is the routines. But if we want to be productive, we have to invest in ourselves. So time is a commodity, but we also gain a yield from our investment in ourselves, personally and professionally. There are many personal self-care habits. Some are healthier than others, right? Like chocolate can be an indulgence, but should I do it all the time? Probably not. Alcohol might be the same way. We can turn anything from moderation and indulgence into a concern. But we should all have those joy triggers that help us practice personal self-care. And so, do we have outside hobbies? So creating and cultivating creativity. So there's a reason coloring for the adult coloring book craze was so popular, because it helped us unwind. It helps us engage our mind, but in a calming way. Gardening is the same way. Crocheting is the same way. Woodworking. Like, do you have a creative outlet? Are you, I have really little happiness triggers, but I know that like coffee is one. Music is another. There are things that I can do when I'm feeling overwhelmed that help me, have more joy. Practicing gratitude. There's a lot of science that if the more gratitude you practice, the less insomnia you have, the less anxiety you have. But can you reframe things in a way that that you're focusing on what's working well instead of what's not? Are you challenging your mind? Part of personal self-care is feeling challenged. So we talk a lot about resolutions and goals this time of year, but are you doing something to challenge yourself? Are you reaching for a goal? Much the same way with pursuing happiness, do you have a way to center yourself? And for some people that's exercise, for some it's religion or faith. What do you do that helps you center yourself? For many, it's you have a therapist that you regularly see, but do you have ways to help you center when your life gets off balance? Can you embrace your emotions? Do you allow yourself to laugh and cry? Are you body conscious? Do you listen to your body when it's tired, when it's hungry, when it's sad? Do you socialize? Do you make time to engage with others? And we're seeing the ramifications of the COVID years where we were very isolated and what a toll that's had on our mental health. And so socializing and being a part of a community is an important practice and some people cleaning, that's good. Maybe I can outsource that to someone who enjoys it. But socializing. And then we'll kind of wrap up here with professional self self-care. So this is something that we don't really think about, right? We hear personal self-care all the time, but what are you doing as a professional to actually make you like your job and your work more, to make you better at what you do? You know, we call this our human capital. It's something that stays with us, that increases, you know, it makes us better at what we do. It makes us more skilled at what we do, but it also, research shows that it makes us enjoy what we do more when we practice professional self-care too. And it can help act as a buffer for that burnout that we talked about at the top of the hour. So are you fueling your craft? Like attending this kind of a webinar, that's a way you fuel your craft, right? That is an investment in your professional self-care. And so are you going to conferences? Are you reading books in your field? Are you maybe taking classes or pursuing something to help you become better at your specialization? Do you clock out? The brain needs, just like we have those production signals to start our day, well, science says we need them to close out our day too. So maybe it's turning on a certain music when you get in the car. Maybe it's changing your clothes when you get home. You know, what is your clocking out routine? Is it going for a walk in your neighborhood? But what signals to your brain, I am done for my work day and I need to shift gears? So, and if you don't have one, create one. Look for establishing a clocking out routine to train your brain. This is work time, this is not work time, because we can be better and more productive during our work time when our brain knows that it's going to get some time off. And then recognizing your stressors. So do you know when you're stressed? Like, can you feel yourself getting snippy or getting, you know, however your stress manifests? Do you know that's when you get sick? So some people will often catch colds because their stress has been through the roof. But do you recognize your stressors? Do you see your frustrations? And when you can recognize that, again, you can address it, like the procrastination. Are you taking time for yourself? Do you have those play routines? And that is a part of professional self-care, because when we don't take time for ourselves, we cannot pour from an empty cup. And then are we communicating? Are we communicating well with our team, with our colleagues, with our superiors, like whomever is in your work world? Are you communicating with them about, you know, maybe there is a conference you want to go to, or maybe you have uncertainty about a project. And so rather than him-hawing about it, just communicate. Can you communicate with that colleague or superior and say, hey, can you clarify what I should be doing on this task, that I want to make sure I am focusing my efforts in the right direction? But communication is a good buffer against burnout. Yeah, laughter yoga. Oh, that's wonderful. I haven't heard of that before. Okay, so our time is up today, but I just kind of want to reinforce that productivity is never an accident. It is always the result of a commitment to excellence, but a commitment to intentionality. To be productive is to be intentional, to really plan, and to have that focused effort. So in this new year, you know, reflect on what's going well, do more of that, and, you know, consider what could do differently, and then work to establish those habits. Like I said, this is all part of a much larger 4-lesson curriculum called Time Well Spent, Productivity Skills for Success, that was developed here at UK through FCS Cooperative Extension. And so if the series could be helpful, the 4-session series could be helpful for your office, or for anyone in your life, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share that material, or to look to how we can get that material to you. But I thank you all for your time, and I wish you a very productive and balanced 2023. Thank you.